Yeah, I was in Chicago last week.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Call to order. We have minutes. If anyone needs their copies, Josh, yes, might be a change.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay, on the planning department report, the way I originally had it, the fourth bullet was Route 10, former feeder location. Project may be falling apart, no official word as of yet. Jessica rightly pointed out that was pretty unprofessional terminology, so we've changed it to no official word as of yet regarding Route 10, former feeder location, closed brand project. And with that, I move to approve the minutes for March 21st with that change.
Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, okay.
So corrected, thank you.
Don't have any public speakers, so we'll move on. We'll let Jamie get back. We'll get Carol get back. Yeah, I'll jump to the school building. And I have a draft letter that I passed around. And it is a draft, so, and I have no thin skin if you cut it up and edit it or something. Oh, Jamie, you are here. I was looking for you
We'll
right
get
there.
Carol.
That's Carol, I'm sorry.
I heard you say that, but I didn't
Oh,
really.
I'm sorry, well, let's go, well, it doesn't matter, let's jump into this, and I'll go back to the planning report. So at the last meeting, we just mentioned that we wanted to be involved with the discussion of the elementary school building sites if a new school is a successful venture.
All I would do, Dave, is the second paragraph, I would just get rid of the word future. Just you guys see us familiar with the process of the disposal of city property.
Okay, yeah.
And would like to actively participate in the discussion.
Yeah, okay, that's fine with me.
This is under the school building, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it's good, it just basically says that we're talking about it on
Yeah.
a monthly basis and we want it to be included.
Yeah, have a voice at the table.
So my only question is there EDIC letterhead that can be emailed to me?
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
I'll-
That's all.
And so it goes to the mayor and the council, I assume.
Well, I figured as much, I mean, because ultimately, city council has a city property committee, I guess they'll make a recommendation.
Good.
Love it. All right, I'll move on that. So Jamie, if you get to give us a planning department report, please.
Wait a minute,
Yeah, you
Oh.
I have information about the mulch account, but. no.
Whoever wants to go ahead, you two.
All right, so I'll just, heads up that starting on May 1st, we're gonna be starting construction for our next, community development block grant infrastructure project, which is Church Street, George Street, and portions of Admiral and Brick Street. We're gonna be flyering the neighborhood next week just to let them know, but, just to give you a heads up that construction project is set to start here in the next few weeks. And should last through probably August, September. In terms of planning board, Fort Hill continues to be in front of the planning board. There's also a proposal for the planning board, in front of the planning board from Pioneer Landscapes on Industrial Parkway for an expansion there. That'll be continued tonight. The planning board will be continuing their discussion on recreational marijuana tonight, and I think talking specifically on whether they believe a moratorium language should be drafted, so that discussion will be continued tonight. And just as a side note, the ordinance committee, city council committee, they have a proposal in front of them for an amendment to the medical marijuana ordinance regarding the hours of operation. The current purveyor who is in that location is asking for expanded hours. to deal with their delivery. So that is in front of council.
Jessica, what was the moratorium in reference to?
Recreational marijuana, so they're gonna be discussing on whether they want to move ahead or even think about a moratorium language for recreational marijuana. Moratorium in terms of putting local not moratorium banning it completely, but just a moratorium until the state has their regs in place and we've got some state guidance. I think that's where they're sort of headed right now. I don't know where they'll end up, they may just decide to sort of leave it. The ordinance subcommittee had discussed last week that at least one member was interested in seeing the planning board put language together ahead of the local regs, just to have them in place so that when the local regs hit, we'll be ready to go. So I'm not sure where we're headed with that. One other zoning thing that's coming before, there's a joint public hearing with planning board and ordinance for a seasonal cottage community. This zoning came out of an individual who purchased Touchstone Farm on West Street and was interested in developing a cottage community, a seasonal cottage community for rental units. So given the way that the zoning was currently crafted with campgrounds and that campgrounds needed to be a nonprofit under the zoning, she didn't want this to be a nonprofit, she wanted to be a for-profit. And so in long discussions with her, it's not a campground she's looking for, it's building cottages. And so the planning board worked with her, but also kept in mind that there are other properties that this could apply to. And so it's in the R80 zone, the R40 zone, and the R35. And it's really, it's a lodging. I mean, given the fact that we have such limited lodging opportunities in East Hampton as it is, I think they thought that this would be a good way to incorporate lodging in the community, to provide some rental during the summer season, and have set it in such a way that they cannot be inhabited year-round and that a caretaker needs to be on site. So there was a lot of thought put into this, but I think it's kind of a nice hybrid lodging opportunity that could happen in East Hampton. So that's going, there'll be a public hearing on that on June 6th.
I sent an email to everyone this morning about the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology. I know there've been interest with, in the EDIC going to tour of mills. This is a precision, state-of-the-art precision manufacturing facility in Connecticut that is available to, it's called the Connecticut Center, but it's actually more regional in focus. And they do demonstrations of the equipment and prototyping for sort of machining parts, and can do streamlining stuff. There's an event in Springfield in May, which I sent you the link for the registration if you're interested in finding out more about this, or if you know anyone. This might be something really good to send to the chamber list. You know, people are interested in manufacturing, that it's a good resource to know of, even if you're not planning to go there. And then in June, there'll be a physical tour of that facility. So if you're interested, there'll be I'll send the information along when that tour becomes, the date is chosen. The other mulch account one, there's $45 left approximately in the mulch account from past fundraising efforts. So I'm not sure if there is a need for it this year or what, but we can't do anything with it without the EDIC sort of saying, yes, we go to, yes, it's, you know. Well, I mean, it was donated. Yeah, it yard was, and a half maybe. It was donated to the city for the spring cleanup, so, for mulch, so it's really, you know.
Does something have to be done with it right away, or can we just sit there?
I can sit there, I would think, but Josh, that string of emails was going back and forth with
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Cottage Street. They were asking, I assume you sent them in the direction of Williston? Because they were looking for money?
I did, yeah, it was National Water Pond and ECA Plus are taking over the May cleanup day.
I just want to clarify, ECA Plus is not taking it over, they're participating as.
I said
Yeah,
jointly.
Okay,
I didn't say they were doing it, I said jointly.
okay.
National Pond was said first.
You said taking it over.
They're not taking it over, I just want to clarify that ECA is participating because they want to participate under the cultural district, and the cultural district committee is working on the district for cleanup, but
Okay.
ECA is not doing a whole cleanup around the city, just to be clear. The cultural district committee, which Liz also sits on, she sits on both, so that's where the confusion might be.
Does the same apply for National Pond then?
They're doing their own thing, they're set up and they're working specifically on the boardwalk is my understanding. If they're expanding beyond that, I'm not aware of it, but my understanding from Liz is that they wanted to focus on the boardwalk and the pond area, and they've been working with John Mason, and they're communicating with him about what needs to be done there, and, but Liz sits on the cultural district committee, so she brought it up at the cultural district meeting, and the cultural district was discussing what they could do in the district. So ECA is not doing a big, you know.
Yes,
And
it was
I'm
part
sorry,
of
the
the,
way it was
I just
presented
wanna-
to me was that National Pond was doing it in consort with ECA Plus. I stand corrected, I'm sorry.
And City Space is cleaning up in front of the old town hall, we decided, because we usually do anyway, so we're gonna clean up in front there.
Well, so, you know, it may be that in a year or two, it falls back into our lap. So we may want to keep that fund.
Well, there was discussion about mulching the trees along, I guess, Union Street and Cottage Street.
Usually is what's done.
And that's, you know, no one has, I don't believe that anyone has found funding for that yet, and if this money is, you know, sitting here and for spring cleanup and.
Well, I
you know,
personally don't mind the money being, used for those purposes, I just don't wanna zero out the account and have the account closed.
Right. And
It
the
would,
fund,
the account would stay open.
Okay, that's all I care about, just so, cause I know what it takes to create an account, and I wanna have to,
Yeah.
that's all.
and the funding would be, we would be able to get the fund. Williston has said that they would participate in this.
Right, we did not send them a letter, or in the
Right.
past you had sent them a letter a couple years in a row, so there was no letter that was sent to them this year.
But Liz may
Not
be
from
doing
us.
that. Liz may be doing that.
Liz may be
Right,
doing
and
that.
they have their own donation accounts and
Right.
that.
So they may have secured the
But
funding.
they're looking, their intent was to get mulch for the
Cottage Street
boardwalk.
property,
No,
right.
no, just for the boardwalk.
Oh, just for the board.
Oh.
Well, actually, that was the National Pond Committee. I don't know what Cottage Street,
Yeah.
and if no one steps up
The
to
trees won't get done.
do the
Yeah.
mulching, then it's not gonna be
Is a yard
affordable.
and a half enough? That's about all they're gonna get for $45.
yeah, I'm not sure they'll get that much, but no, it won't be
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And we were typically spending $500 or $600, Josh?
Really? For mulch?
No, it was closer to 300.
300?
Wow.
We spent 290 something last
Okay.
year, which is
Okay.
why we
Wow.
have 445,
Left.
or 307, I think, last year.
Okay.
But there was a bunch left over, which then went to the boardwalk.
I would let it ride. If the trees get done, they get done. If they don't, they don't. That's part of, I mean, more's gonna get done than we thought was by, we thought with us backing away, there's a possibility nothing gets done. It sounds like they're gonna do something around Cottage Street, around Old Town Hall, see what happens.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we let the $45 sit there? Is that okay?
Your call.
Yeah.
Okay, let it sit.
they've been out there for 100 years.
That'll be worth $50.
Exactly. Well, yeah.
Mm.
So Pascal Molina's not here, but.
She's coming, she
Okay,
said she'll be late,
That's
so.
right, that's great.
Can I ask a quick question? Jessica, I didn't catch where the location of the new construction project that you first brought up.
Sure, Church Street,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
George Street,
George?
and a portion of Admiral and Briggs.
And a portion of Briggs as well?
Portion of Briggs as well. Yep,
Okay. Thanks.
you're welcome.
Could you end just before Pat's house and see how that goes over?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
Unless anybody has anything to say about number 6 or number 7. I'd like to go to number 9. And if you recall, that was, I didn't bring my copy down. The permitting report, we talked about it. And I was just, I think a few meetings ago, we left it that if something came up with it, if there was any further action, we would maybe endorse it or support it. But I'm wondering now if we should maybe just try to move that along a little bit. There was some recommendations, and I don't see any action. Not that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but there was basically a couple recommendations to make permitting a little bit easier in the industrial zone, I believe. And is there anything from the planning department on that? Or?
No, we have so many zoning things right now cooking that it's a little hard to,
Yeah.
for the board to focus on more than one thing at a time. So
Uh-huh.
now that the seasonal cottage is moved along, and then next will be recreational marijuana, signage is next, because that's half done and needs to be finished. It's been sitting on the way back burner for a while and needs to get brought back up and finished. So those are the sort of 3 things on the zoning docket. But if you want to submit a letter from the EDIC to the planning board to get them to start thinking about this, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Well, that's all I'm looking for, to be honest with you. My idea is a modest idea. I just think that, you just get them into the pipeline, and then, the pipeline might.
Do you have priorities out of that report? Because there's a lot of recommendations. I mean, if you could pick out maybe
Well, then
top 3 or something, then.
Well, then what we'll do is we'll work on that for next meeting then. I don't myself,
That might be helpful, rather than saying, this whole thing needs to be tackled. But if you can maybe pick out at least maybe the top 3 priorities from the EDIC's perspective on what needs to get amended,
Yep.
then it will give the planning board at least some direction.
I'm pretty sure I have that in electronic form, so I'll just resend it and we can look at it for next time.
It's on the city's,
Yeah.
it's on the planning department website too.
Oh, okay, good. And got past me now. I'm gonna jump to number 11. What's that? Oh, I'm messing you up, huh?
I just didn't number them on my agenda, so.
Oh.
Leave it from whether-
Just go back, here's the thing.
Oh, there you go. You tried to-
I was just thinking that, we need to throw out there, I don't know if you have to go as far as a letter, but, Dave, a few weeks ago brought up EV charging stations. The one at the high school, there's 2 there that I'm aware of, are being used actively. Of course, they're both by teachers, but they're, day in and day out. And then, it's easy to say include them on design plans, grants, city, but I was wondering if there's something that could be done as far as getting one installed at City Hall. Because it's, not just because there's employees here, but it's kind of visible, and it just makes a statement a little bit. And I don't know, to be honest with you, who would like to pick up that ball? I don't mean any one of us, but in general, who would pick up that ball?
Yeah, I think that would be a decision by the mayor's office, would be my guess.
Uh-huh.
We'd also like to have one,
Over by the mills, maybe behind.
yeah. I'm thinking to bring people in to shop while they charge, And here could be one, but maybe one up by Biggie or like on Main Street or something like that.
So I guess the question is, what's the city's responsibility on private property? If Biggie wants to put one in, he could put one in, he doesn't necessarily need the city's
That's right,
help.
that's
So,
true.
so if the city was to be involved, then it would be identifying public locations, like the municipal parking lot makes sense. I
Yeah,
don't-
yeah. See, I'm on the, in the phase more of encouraging at the moment. So even if somehow we can encourage Mike to think about it, whether, that way, that solves the private property. If he puts one on, I have no idea if there's any grants available for this.
I feel like there's things that
incentives.
used to pass through the state, I can keep an eye out for them.
Uh-huh.
I think through the, like the Green Communities Program, there may be some grants through there. I feel like there used to be, but I don't know, I'd have to do some research, I don't know if they're still there anymore under the current governor, or whether it was a Patrick administration priority.
Uh-huh.
So we can do some research and see if there's grants available.
Yeah, I've looked into that a little bit, and I do believe grants are available. I didn't spend a bunch of time on it until I could see if
Right.
there's any traction. But the current governor is very supportive of, in fact, it's a goal of the state currently to have, to increase EVs in the state progressively to, I think, by year 2030, there's a goal of a certain percentage of EVs to meet that goal. There are plans to install the, very expensive, very quick charging centers along Pike at places. Those can cost $10,000 to $20,000 depending on the situation, but they charge every vehicle in like 15 minutes. The ones that would be more affordable for a municipality would be 240 volt, and they go, they could be anywhere from $8,000, $10,000 each. I mean, for a two station, like you see most of these, and so one at 50 Payson would make a great deal of sense to me, anyway, in terms of because the parking lot's used for public parking after hours, but also I think maybe in future choices around vehicles, the city actually had a charging capability at 50 Payson, it might actually consider buying an electric vehicle. Stuff like that. Just
Does
makes it
anyone
a
know
lot
how they were
easier.
funded in Northampton?
What's that?
Does anyone know how the EV stations on Crafts Avenue and in the parking lot were funded in Northampton?
At Crafts, it was just an idea, and in the parking structure, it doesn't cost anything, there's no metering of your charging there.
No, I
It's
know,
just
I charge that, I'm
Yeah.
asking for the installation of them. How were those work financially? Were
I
they
don't
tax
know.
dollars or?
Talked to
private
Narkowitz, said, I could explore this a lot more if there's interest, I wanted to know that as well.
Okay.
I was going where you went, Jessica, which is, the poor public-private thing, but what's in it for the business owner? Is he actually being paid a fee? Is it his electricity, I assume?
There are some, there's one company, for instance, called ChargePoint. So they will install, like at Big Y in Northampton, ChargePoint, put what do you call this?
220 charging ports.
Outlets?
Charging,
Ports.
No, the port is what you put it in.
Okay.
What are the?
Stations.
No, it's only one station, it has two,
Okay, we get it.
yeah, plugs, there you go.
Plugs.
Yeah, it's got through, anyway, they're metered, so you get to go shopping, but you have to pay for the charge.
Okay.
Through, it's like a little card you hold up in front of the thing and wave it.
Debit card.
Yeah,
I
it's a debit
guess.
card.
So it's charging you.
Yeah. So that's, don't know how that works, what the relationship is there. I believe Big Y gets part of the action, certainly ChargePoint must. I don't know how that.
And I assume that those parking places are reserved, so just a traditional shopper can't park there.
You have to be an EV to be able to park there.
And then I guess the
And you
only,
have to be charging.
I guess the
I
only
couldn't park there and not charge.
downside to a Big E's is if somebody were charging their car and decided to walk down to the restaurant for lunch, and of course he'd lose the parking anyway, even if it was vacant, he can't, so that's probably
Well,
the
that wouldn't make
payback.
any sense either, because that would be a level 2 station, and that would take 20 minutes to even make any sense of it all. So people don't typically shop, I shop at Big E's all the time, I'm in and out in 10 minutes usually, it would make sense. The idea of a charging station or multiple ones in East Hampton has to do with people in electric vehicles trying to create, it becomes a destination.
Right,
It's
so-
like people go from here to Northampton
Right.
to shop because they can charge a vehicle.
Yeah.
There's such a paucity of charging stations. You either charge at home
Right.
or you gotta find some place to go, and.
So it
gosh,
makes
you go to
sense
Northampton.
here in the sense that 50 Basin could be a destination
Yep.
for people using the pond or
That's right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Big East doesn't make sense necessarily, because you're not gonna be there long enough to charge your vehicle.
But the mill buildings, that would make sense.
Yeah,
Right.
I know buildings,
Yes.
yeah.
Again, there's a funky
Private.
public-private
Yeah,
partnership out there, and
exactly,
it's gray, and it's,
Different mill owners have different
it's,
opinions.
yeah, different mill owners have different opinions, and, yeah, it's
Eateries would
it's
benefit,
complicated.
restaurants and places could certainly benefit from,
Right.
something nearby.
Okay.
Well, and like anything else, the technology is fast changing. I mean, and right now, car batteries are lithium, and there's a lot of talk now that that the actual inventor of that is 94 and has invented, is working on a process where the batteries are glass encased and they're safer. And if that does hold out to be true, that's going to actually revolutionize that product. And I'm not worried about that so much. I take it from a more marketing. We have charging. We're hip. We're cool.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's just part of the little things that help attract people. That's
Would it
all.
make sense that the playground, that another talk, the ball fields?
No, parking lot, parking
It's
lot
too
is
far
Cottage
away,
Street.
yeah.
No, but no,
Just-
the ball,
just
I don't know how big these facilities are, or how they have to
The one-
be, if it's freestanding in the middle of a parking lot, because the only one that I'm aware of is the one at the parking garage, which is like built into the structure.
Yeah.
so-
well, even the one at high school, it's off a light pole.
Oh, it is?
They're
Okay, so they're small.
minimally invasive.
Yeah, they're small.
Yeah,
Small.
there are all kinds of different.
Okay.
But, the park though actually is a good idea as well though. I mean, there's different.
Because I play ball on Sunday,
Right.
there's people there all Sunday.
No,
and
yeah,
it-
I mean,
you know,
It's just as good idea as here, it's visible and it would be used, I'm not all year, of course.
Right.
But maybe it'll help us get that park used all year.
yeah.
Well, can I ask them
Yeah.
because our capacity is thin, that if this is something that EDIC wants to take on as a project idea, that at least you put a proposal
Like
together or
what?
do some research about, what would make sense, like make the pitch to the city on why we should have one at 50 Payson, and what the cost would be, and are there upfront costs, and are there grants that are available, get that information together, and then, we can, as the department, help work it through the city process, and talk to the mayor and be that resource for the mayor, but I don't have necessarily the time to put a research packet together, so if I could ask if the EDIC could do that, then we'd be willing to have that conversation
Is there
with the mayor.
anyone that wants to pick up, look into it,
I'll look at that.
okay.
Great.
I've already gathered a lot of material, just trying to figure out what makes
Sure,
most
sure.
sense, yeah.
I mean, I would narrow the proposal into installing one at 50 Payson
Mm-hmm.
and what it would take to do that.
And the other one I was thinking, it's not,
Maybe even at the park too.
I was thinking of City Hall, just having it included in the design phase.
I
City
don't know what it,
space.
yeah, and I don't know enough about, honestly,
That
I'm not.
might get tricky, because I don't think the city owns the parking lot.
Behind it, you
On the
mean?
street or in
Or on the
parking?
street?
Are you talking about on the street in the
Well,
front?
where does
or-
Jean-Pierre plug his in?
He probably plugs it in at home.
No, he
That's a
plugs it
gray
in- he
area
plugs-
as
He
well.
plugs it in.
This is the cord out the
This is
back.
the
Extension
cord.
cord.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so I'm just saying, since we're going through that process, it's just like anything else, if it's a small add-on, if it's thrown in, but
Well, that's true.
it's a big change order after the fact, and it's.
You can do one on a building, for instance, right on a building that's already wired, that has a service panel that has still some capacity
Right.
for a 240 amp service. A circuit running out to, it could, for $1,200, you could put a, one on the side of a building tapped into its electrical system. And that'll charge the vehicle in about from dead to fully charged in about 8 hours. So if somebody's hanging out for a couple of hours,
Yeah.
they're getting a third.
Yeah, but I think
So
the
this-
building, so the city hall building, there's no place you could park right next to anything.
And what the mayor's
Yeah.
gonna wanna know is, if we're not charging these individuals to charge their car,
Exactly.
what's the cost to the city in
Yeah.
terms of electricity? How is the electric bill going to change?
And I don't think we can give up those parking spaces in downtown.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah,
that you gotta
yeah.
be careful about putting.
Well, that's why we,
Yeah.
that's why we
Parking
throw
spaces
things out,
like-
all those
Yeah.
considerations.
Dave, you said that for $1,200 you can make just like a basic one.
Yeah.
right? But the ones at Crafts Ave in Northampton are like 10 or $20,000.
It could be, well, because they're kiosks, they involve trenching, running conduit underground to them, you know, just their location is part of that, but, charging, apparatus on the side of a building that's already got, capacity for a 240 volt circuit, that's pretty common, even houses have that, I mean, it's, so it really depends on configuration, like here, you could attach them to the building, the cords are certainly plenty long enough. Sitting by the curbside, you've got to get through all of the, you know, a lot more work involved.
Well, if we, you know, do a little bit of research and we'll try to keep our focus narrow, I mean, for your capacity okay.
And I think if City Space wants to bring it up, I mean,
Yeah.
Carol and
Yeah.
Pascalina both attend those meetings.
Yeah.
If you wanna bring it up under
Will
the
do.
City Space
Yeah.
design, then at least.
Yeah, and if they
That's-
say get lost, that's fine.
That's fine.
Uh-huh.
I brought
Oh,
it.
it's no big deal.
Yep. Okay.
Pascalina, you have anything to say about ECA?
Yeah, we had a very successful book fest, on Saturday, April 8th, and it's hard to say how many people were there, because I'm really trying to wrap my head around, like, how do you know how many people attend a city, like a downtown-wide event? But our estimations are like 3,000, give
Oh, wow.
or take, which is great. We have people on Cottage Street, we have people in the Mill District, people downtown at Old Town Hall. And, we're kind of utilizing like a lot of what we learned through that and applying it to cultural chaos. So thinking a little bit more intentionally how to not just have a great sales day on Cottage Street for cultural chaos, but how to encourage people to come back to East Hampton and spend money in East Hampton. So, and I want to do this for Book Fest, you know, for any kind of like in the city event that we do from now on. But at Cultural Chaos, which is on, I think I already said it, but Saturday, June 10th from 12 to 5, we're going to be doing a scavenger hunt, which is going to get people into businesses. And then when they complete the scavenger hunt, part of what they get is their little, you know, is going to be a card that is all like discounts at all local businesses. And they're all going to be good through Labor Day. So hopefully encourage like greatest, you know, second, third, and fourth greatest sales days of the year, like in those summer months as well. Any of the businesses that I just met with Valley Peddlers, I talked to Johnny at Nini, like anybody that I'm just kind of throwing this out there to, everyone's really into it. Like everyone's like, oh, this is great, yeah. And it's like just something nominal, like nothing that's gonna, you know, do damage. It's like the opposite, but people can just keep coming back. So yeah, I feel like these meetings have been really helpful for me in just trying to think, you know, intentionally and strategically about what is the relationship between arts and business in East Hampton, because they're totally related, as we all know, and just like trying some different things to see how it works.
Great. That's very cool. Besides Cultural Chaos and Book Fest, do you have any other big events?
In terms of big events, not again until the fall.
What would that be?
We'll have the Buskers event as the second Saturday in.
Did you have that before?
Yeah.
In September, yeah, this is
What
supposed to
was
be
that?
like the 4th year, maybe?
Oh, Jesus.
It's
Street
just on Union
musicians.
Street,
Okay.
yeah, focus on Union Street to get people on Union Street.
Huh.
To encourage walkability,
Yeah.
it's like going down. We will be launching a new youth arts education program this summer. So it's not an event, but it is a new initiative
Yeah.
that we'll be working on over the next couple months, putting that together.
That's good. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, number 10, you know, I have it listed as over 55, elderly, the DB, and then at the last meeting, I suggested that people familiar, just look over the table of uses. Then Jamie also suggested that we look at the housing production plan. I also sent out 2 articles. They weren't to be studied, they're just food for thought articles, one on Main Street and one was just a letter to the editor from artist Seth Lepore, talking about arts in schools, arts and economic driver. So what I hope to do today though is kind of narrow down number 10 to maybe, the last few times we've talked, it's been good discussion, it's been kind of free flowing, and I don't want to discourage that. I kind of want to start moving forward a little bit. So, but I'm going to have it be, what's your pleasure? If it's downtown business zoning today, or elderly, or cottages, seasonal, go for it. Tom had thrown out, you went to a meeting earlier today and they, threw out a, well, I'll let you talk about it, but I thought it was interesting that East Hampton is slightly older than the state average.
And aging.
Yeah.
Every year, if you're lucky, every year you get a year older.
But I thought it was also interesting that the 45 age group, which has all your kids and everything, is quite large in town. I think that's encouraging.
Right. I think the key takeaway from that was that a couple of different studies showed that by the year 2030, the over 60 population in East Hampton virtually doubles. Goes from roughly 3,000 to 6,000. So
If everybody stays.
we're already seeing today some folks leaving because there is no place to go. And I've had a lot of conversations with realtors and developers and everybody you can think of about this, where in the world of real estate, you're always looking for that churn. So in the life cycle, someone's leaving mom and dad's basement and moving into an apartment, and eventually moving into a home, and then eventually maybe even moving into a bigger home, and then eventually moving into a smaller home, and then potentially assisted living. And that all of the points of that along the way where people make those changes creates that churn in the economy. And whenever that comes to a screeching halt somewhere along that life cycle of real estate, it stops everything behind it. So the last time I looked, there were 65 homes for sale in the city of East Hampton. The last time I talked to Dave, there were virtually no
Yeah.
2-bedroom apartments available in East Hampton.
Well, there's nothing, no new homes coming on the market this
Right.
last week.
So the log jam is all the way up and down that food chain.
Yeah.
So part of it might be economic. Unfortunately, what it's doing right now is driving up the price, because if you're a seller, you're in a great place to be.
Yeah.
A local realtor just told me the other day that they had a home for sale in East Hampton, listed at $270. They had 29 people show up at an open house. They had 5 full price offers. The listing of $270 sold for $294.
Yeah.
So it's driving up the prices because of supply and demand, because there's no new construction, there's no new houses coming on the market, what have you. So you might argue the economy's causing that, potentially, but is there a way for a municipality to impact that churn or lack thereof? Housing opportunity, what have you. So I would argue when the project on East Street came online, how many units, Dave?
I think it's approximately 60, 65.
So 65 of the yellow houses all came online, probably sold out within a 6 to 12 month period. That created the churn in the market. That created folks moving in there who were downsizing, whose houses went on the market, someone moved out of an apartment into their house, someone moved out of dad's basement into their, not that I'm trying to get a kid out of the basement.
Yeah, right?
But,
Sounds like it.
Is there a message?
but, so when's the last time we had that kind of opportunity or development in East Hampton? And it caused me to look at the over 55, and I know there's no moratorium, but when I went back and looked at it at Dave's suggestion, there was something like a 30% affordable housing requirement
on over 55 developments. That's why they're done it. Well, it's set in black and white, 30%.
We don't have a 55 ordinance anymore. We have a multifamily ordinance, but it's not required for it to be.
Right, that's the distinction I've been trying to draw, but up until 2008, we had an over 55 ordinance.
We did, but
Yeah.
it doesn't exist anymore.
Right, and
But it,
some people think we should reinstitute it.
what did it refer to, Dave? What
Well,
I-
why can't somebody just build a multifamily, and if they want to deed restrict it, they could? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the
Because
multifamily
you have to
exists,
have
they
the-
could do it.
Well, you're gonna have to have the affordable housing component.
You don't have
No.
to. It doesn't require it. It's optional.
What if you want to
But a
build
density
get-
bonus before
If you
elderly,
get a density bonus, yes.
right, but
What if you
before
wanna build
elderly housing, you had a
65
density
units?
bonus.
Well, I'm sorry?
In elderly housing, the way it was written, you had a density bonus.
Okay, but we don't have any affordable units for those, for the senior housing. I mean, you're talking about people who are getting priced out and want to move into something more affordable or can't afford to stay in their home anymore. Where are the affordable units for those individuals that are elderly?
Well, see, I guess.
So, I guess I can't advocate on behalf of a density bonus without having some affordability restriction as part of that.
See, that's the problem though. See, when Jim Sullivan changed it, he was hung up that some of the projects were high-end and there was nothing for the affordable component. But we're losing out on overall affordability and we're losing it fast. And the world is changing. Just a little example. 3 years ago, the post office, the United States Postal Service was threatening bankruptcy. They wanted to have no Saturday hours, no Saturday delivery. Now, on Easter Sunday, U.S. Postal Service is delivering Amazon packages.
Because of
Yeah.
They're
Amazon.
Right.
competing.
Yeah.
But the point is not, I don't care about Amazon, the point is, things are changing rapidly. Too fast for actually even cities to respond. The things are changing, and so Jim's notion to bring more affordable housing to East Hampton at the expense of over 55, the way it was written, because that was chopped out, is part of the logjam we have right now.
But I'll tell you right now that Lathrop is looking to expand,
Yeah.
and they're adding another 25 units.
Yeah,
Right,
Lathrop's on the high end.
High
of
end,
the-
definitely the high end.
Anybody
But-
sitting around this table is not going into Lathrop.
No.
So, but you want to create a 55 plus without having an affordability provision.
Correct.
What makes you think that they built their original Lathrop under the 55 housing?
Yeah.
That's how they were originally built.
Correct, they can, but I'm saying Dave Lepine's was, I don't know, those were selling originally, I don't know, 250,
They
somewhere
weren't
in that
deed
range.
restricted affordable units. They might have been market affordable, because
Correct.
that's what the market was at the time.
Correct, that's what I'm saying. There's no market affordability for someone who wants to sell their home. It might be paid for, they walk away with a nest egg and they want to buy another home. Forget about just market affordability.
Right, but
There's
how
not
are
an
you,
option
but
today.
if you don't deed restrict it, how do you control what that market
Well, that was-
affordability
that's-
is? I guess that's my
Yeah,
question, is
that would
like,
be the zoning ordinance. If you wanna get a special permit for over 55 housing, one of the conditions would be they have to be deed restricted.
right.
And,
But we already
May-
have,
may I
we already
point out something that-
have density bonuses in the ordinance for, if you wanna develop a project that has mixed rate market units and affordable units, you get a density bonus.
but the reality is, and you saw it, Trump was elected. What has happened? New market tax credits are out the window. Grants are out the window. So the affordable housing under that model is not gonna be built for the next 3 or 4 years. You're not gonna see, Valley CDC Northampton was in the pipeline. The one on Hospital Hill is a whole political deal. You're not gonna see 15 College Street, Treehouse, or Parsons Village in East Hampton in the next 6 or 7 years.
We don't have any land for them anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's my next
more of
point.
a problem.
That's my next point. We're 13 square miles. If you take the point of view that our open space is wonderful, desirable, we don't want to touch it, how are we going to be creative to create churn, to create economic activity, to keep things moving?
Well, we certainly have enough parcels that are up for redevelopment. We have mills that plan to do residential that haven't put them in yet because they haven't got the financing in place yet. But there are plans to do an extensive residential apartments. I'm not saying that they're gonna be deed restricted affordable units. They're gonna be market rate, probably high end, but they're gonna be new affordable apartments that are gonna be put there. There's a lot of local developers that are coming to me to look to do mixed-use developments with retail on the ground floor and apartments upstairs.
But here's what I'm getting at.
In the downtown.
So this realtor has one house for sale at 270. 270's,
I can't even afford 270.
Yeah.
okay. But he had 29 people show up at the open house. So I would argue that one of those 29 people bought it. If he had 28 more of those houses, they would have sold for 270, not 290.
But
But-
that's,
I don't doubt that everything you're saying is absolutely true, but the problem I'm having with pitching it as an over 55 or an over 60 or anything like that, and it's in the statistic that you cited, by 2030, the 60
16 over.
and over is going to double.
In East Hampton.
Okay, and the reason that would happen, another interpretation of that statistic is, now I've been here for 25 years in East Hampton, I think we've added 800 people since I've been here. Population has not increased. So if the older people, the over 60, that population is increasing, where are the younger people? The problem is younger people can't afford a house. They can't stay in East Hampton. It's not the older folks. 60, I'm 63. I mean, I can afford, my house has been affordable since I've lived there. If I had deeded it over as, if I wanted to restrict it, it would met all the requirements for affordability. In fact, a lot of the housing stock in East Hampton, most of the time I've been here, has been affordable at 80% of median area income, so it's all been affordable, but not to the younger generation. 50, I mean, I bought another house when I was 50 years old. I have two. I mean, I don't need to. Why over 50? Why
Well, I
over
took it from their point
55?
of
I
view.
mean, come on, that's like
But
people are still in their prime these days.
But there's
at
two large
55.
parcels in town that right now are gonna go subdivision. But if they could go over 55, they would rather go over 55, and that would be good, beneficial to the city, because the subdivision is gonna have higher cost to the city. And probably similar tax revenue, but you have the street maintenance, and this and that, where.
Get you stuff to be over 55 to get in there.
Here's
We
the-
need housing for younger people.
You'll
And
get
we
it
need
with-
some business in this town to keep younger people here.
You'll
Yeah.
get it when you get the over 55s moving and putting their
And
houses on
then
the market.
The younger people are supposed to
They'll
buy
buy
the houses
houses.
these folks downsized from?
Exactly.
That they've been in their whole time and they need to downsize now? Like
Correct.
a $270,000 home, the younger people are gonna buy
Can't
a
afford it
200.
to.
That's impossible.
The
Yeah,
younger-
I don't think
doesn't
it's
work.
So when I downsized and was lucky enough to find a smaller home in East Hampton, my house sold for 240. I
You
think,
still, younger
Still
people,
240
the wages
There's
are
not
out of
enough
control.
housing under 200 is
Yes.
the problem.
Yes,
That's
under
right.
That's
200.
senior
Exactly.
housing
Yep.
under 200. That's
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 not-
They've
That's
got
not-
nothing anymore.
that's not-
We
there
haven't had
isn't
anything
any.
for a
that's
while.
not reasonable for today.
It could be
Well,
reasonable for,
But that's what young people can afford, and I'm talking young people, I've got clients in their 40s going out as first-time home buyers, and they can't afford
That's right.
anything but 190, 180
Yeah.
maybe, and
It may
there's
not be
nothing out
reasonable
there for
it may not be
them. So
reasonable
they're
to
moving
say
to
it's
Holyoke.
a home.
Yeah,
Well,
Holyoke,
Greenfield,
yeah.
taxes are too high.
House doesn't have to be a single family house. I mean, it could be condos, If there's a condo that's affordable.
Well,
But part of the problem, I see what you're saying too, is I've got older people that wanna downsize, but they can't, and I'm not talking just straight East Hampton, and they're afraid to put their house on the market because they don't see anything that they can move into.
Something's
So
turning
they
it
can
though,
afford it.
when a realtor puts a house on the market and it sells overnight with 29 people looking at it, 5 full price offers, there's pent up demand at that price
There's
apparently.
pent-up demand because people can't afford Northampton.
Yes.
They're coming to East Hampton.
Yeah.
And now East Hampton's becoming affordable.
Yeah.
And it's trickling to it's trickling to
Yeah.
Holyoke, it's
Oh, yeah.
trickling to Montague, Turner's Falls, places that have
Springfield.
a more affordable housing stock. It's a regional thing. It's a regional
But it's-
shift that's happening.
It's the economy. If a builder can't build a house to sell at 190, I don't care how are you gonna do it?
Well, there's no land. I mean, Northampton doesn't
Well,
have
there
any
is
land,
land.
East Hampton.
There is land in East Hampton that could be developed for housing,
But
but
there's, I mean,
That's
this is
not
a
gonna be
large, it's a
affordable.
larger picture. If we don't
Yeah.
have enough housing in the city, we don't have a housing stock,
Yeah.
then the solution isn't just to make some housing for old people. That doesn't help
No.
create more housing stock.
sure it does. The
It-
houses
it-
they
but
vacate, the houses they vacate.
But why should we target 55 plus over
Okay,
other
target anybody
expensive-
you want in the middle, but my point is, when you open it up, when you open the floodgates at one end or the other, it's gonna create the churn along that whole food chain.
But why not just,
I mean,
why isn't the why isn't it just to create more housing?
In
That,
general.
like, if people need,
You're not-
if young people need, housing and they're primarily looking at single bedroom and 2 bedrooms, we don't have those available, and older people need single bedroom and 2 bedrooms that are capable of,
On the first floor.
negotiating
There's
a
a whole-
wheelchair. There's no
Yes,
reason
yeah.
why one can't be,
So
a
it-
7-year-old living there, and then when they move out, that a 22-year-old moves in.
Yeah.
Why say that no one,
Right,
but
so-
Can I ask a bigger question? If the zoning was in place, would anybody build it? Are there developers that are chomping at the bit trying to do 55? I'm looking to
Yeah,
those in the
I-
building community that would,
Yes,
are there,
there's-
is that a pent-up demand from the building community that this is something that they want and need? Because I haven't heard that.
From the local building community, there's 1 or 2, because that's what they understand, that's what they're familiar with. They don't wanna go, they
If it
have.
was deed restricted. Now, that's adding a whole nother layer, that it's complicated to get units on the inventory. There's a whole process involved, there's a marketing plan, there's a lottery system. The local developers that I've talked to are not willing to go through that
That's
process.
by and large true,
And so
you
that's
add
where
that
it
deed
gets
restricted-
complicated.
Right.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, it came up, the idea of more, like the land at the south end of town that's zoned industrial. Another thing, I mean, I just touched on it, I mean, I have been here for 25 years. I don't see anything happening down that way, industrial-wise. Do we ever think anything's going to happen?
Well, Bernie Gall owns a huge chunk of that.
But I mean,
So-
that would be a great place for housing, and shopping centers down that way, there's all kinds of stuff down there. So
That's-
why industrial? Why is that? Why is it not residential?
It's been industrial for, I think when we did the zoning map update, it's been industrial
Forever.
forever.
Yeah.
Right, but that's
It was
kind
very
of Dave's
original.
point though, is.
Yeah, I don't know
as-
why.
No, that goes back to my Amazon thing. It was for all great reasons and natural and reasonable why it was zoned industrial.
Mhm.
But today, does it make
Makes
sense?
no
I don't think so.
So that's
That's,
another question, that's a
Well, but
separate
that's the
question.
question I think we should be pushing along slowly, is because, I appreciate everything both you and Jamie said, but by the same token, the longer we stand still, the problem magnifies. If people,
So what's the proposal, I guess, from the EDIC? Because I'm hearing a lot of there's a need, but I'm not hearing what's the solution. I like to hear solutions.
It's always a shortage of parcels to develop, so
Yes.
it's just.
So,
I think, to be honest with you, the solution, and this is gonna be touchy-feely, vague, is that.
Bring it on.
Is that zoning should be a living document, and it should not be set in stone.
okay, so then I challenge the EDIC to put together a proposal to send to the planning board on what your priorities are zoning wise, to have them take it up. That's, I mean, you need to not just work through us and say, this is what we need, because.
Oh, no, that's
we've got-
fair, but
you know,
you have to
that's-
start somewhere.
Yeah,
That's-
so
that's,
that would be my recommendation to the EDIC, if there are things that you think are a priority and need to be taken up, submit some document, a memo to the planning board, listing out your priorities, 1 through whatever, and maybe it's the same one that you put together for the industrial zoning, maybe it's the same packet, and that this is another thing, and explaining why you think that this
We
is
could-
necessary and the data backing it up.
Can definitely do that, but I just wanna go back to try to clarify a couple of things along the way. So, I'm not sure how many years ago the project on East Street went in, which was specific.
Before my time.
Yeah, so it's gotta be,
It was before the master plan was happening, because that was a huge dialogue and discussion during the master plan process.
Right.
Was all of these dense developments popping up on East Street, agricultural land, scenic views. At the same time, the Stop and Shop proposal was in front of the planning board. So between those two development scenarios, that was a lot of
Remember,
master
they
plan dialogue.
popped up though, because in 1996, and that zoning overhaul, they were put in place.
Mhm.
So, good or bad, the point was, they popped up because they were encouraged
Zoning was in
to.
place.
They were encouraged to.
and the point is, they're 100% full with a waiting list. So, but where I was going with that is, how many more of those Obviously, something's changed, because no more of those have popped up anywhere in the city on any developer's available land. So something's changed to discourage that type of
Well, I
development.
think the economy tanked in 2008
Yes.
as well. So that was probably
Okay.
a huge part of it as well,
Okay.
not just the zoning.
Okay, but we're 9 years away from that now.
And I think we're still recovering too, to some extent.
Well, Dave answered the question, yes, when you asked, do you think there's someone who would do such a development today? Could someone today, with the current zoning, replicate what's on East Street
Yes, under the multifamily housing.
without affordable?
Yes.
Meaning they could put in 65
Not that
unit,
many units.
65 unit development.
I'd have to go
They
back.
they
and
could do an open space development.
Why is it that?
They could do multifamily.
When I read it, the multifamily says the 30%.
You get
affordable.
higher density if you put in affordable units.
Right, but you wouldn't get that same density that was on East Street.
You might not. I think that there are some that I've heard through the grapevine, and I don't have evidence of this, but my understanding is some of those East Street condos were not constructed properly
Yes.
and have problems.
Not the
Not that
yellow
project, the other
buildings.
project.
I'm
The other
not
ones.
gonna say which project,
Yeah.
but I understand that there's
That was our-
issues up there.
That was our friend Wes, and that's all been taken care of, I think.
So, I don't know.
Again, I'm not saying which one, but,
Well,
So
okay,
now-
no, we're going on your point.
nevertheless,
No,
Put together a plan.
put
right.
together a plan.
So, while we have a little bit of
We're gonna
time.
And show up
discuss
at
it.
the planning board and advocate for it.
Yeah.
You gotta
Don't
show
just,
it.
you gotta show up
Yeah.
and say this is,
Well, we can do that,
Yeah.
and, we'll work towards that.
yeah,
We talked about it last meeting as well, and there's some different, ideas. It's not a monolithic board committee up there. Housing downtown, the Horace Scurry building, there's differences of opinions, so we'll hash that out as well.
can I just note that there have been some local folks that have now with the Union Street redesign are interested in putting second stories on some of the one-story buildings downtown and adding housing on top. So there's density that could happen going up that don't necessarily have to take up vacant parcels.
Right.
So it's just another way to think about it.
Just to
Well,
clear.
one of the other elements about that was just, Dave and I were talking about this a little earlier. You know how East Forks has live-in units,
Mhm.
doing the same downtown.
I think there are folks that are interested in doing something.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Well, so I'm not sure what I'm reading wrong in this part of the zoning, whatever I was reading today. And this is what one sentence says, I hope I'm not taking out of context. For multifamily housing limited to elderly residents, projects shall have at least 30% affordable housing units.
Where are you?
7.461.
Is it under those awful PUD sections? Maybe?
It's under smart growth.
Oh, that's the 40R zoning, so that's not even, that's a standalone zoning. That's totally separate.
That's not town-wide either.
That's not townwide, that's for very specific, right behind you, kitty corner behind you.
Yep.
Those are the parcels that it applies to, and it's optional zoning, it's not required.
Well,
Right.
in regards over 55, I'm gonna ask you guys if you could maybe clarify your views, and we have to do some more homework. And it's not my desire to make 2 or 3 zone changes. I'm trying to set a little bit of a tone. You can't get a tattoo on the internet. You can't buy fish on the internet. I'm trying to encourage things in town that, I always mention Amazon, but, this is what brings people, things that you can't do on the internet. As opposed,
It's experience-based,
Right.
Yeah.
experience-based opportunities in
Yeah.
downtown.
and, experience is, housing, it's restaurant, it's recreation. I'm not trying to pigeon, I don't think there's any silver bullet or whatever, answer. But, I do know though that things are moving too fast, I bought my stuff in from 1987, the first master plan that I was involved with. 1996, the RKG downtown study, they're all great. The problem with all of them was they took a year and a half. It's just the nature of the beast. Some had money, some didn't have money. And I just don't think you can stand still. You know, that being said, I
Do
know.
you think we're standing still?
No, no, I don't.
I think to a little, yes, I think to a certain
In
degree.
what way?
Well, because the first chink in an organism's armor is complacency. You have to have the mindset of growth. Now, growth doesn't mean that if you're $1 million company one year, you're $1.2 million company next year. You have to account for inflation and the churn. You're gonna have businesses come, and you're gonna have businesses leave. Even me right now, I'm building 3 mixed-use buildings. In all honesty, I have 6 commercial entities, and 2 of them are over a year. So it makes no mathematical sense for me to be doing the office space that I'm building. But obviously, if I want those 12 apartments, I gotta build a commercial space. Storefront / office is gonna see downward pressure on rents, which is no big deal. You get it back in the apartments. But things are changing. Things are changing fast. And the mills are great. The mills are a plus. But if people wanna focus on the downtown in terms of when they drive through it, we need to do some work, because there's gonna be more empty stores. And I think everything the ECA is doing, I think, Casey, everything in general is positive, but you can't keep riding that train that worked yesterday.
I don't feel like I don't know. I'd like more specifics, I guess, but we can talk about that offline.
Well, no, but,
I feel like that we're doing a lot to try to move things in a very
Well, maybe
positive, forward
Maybe what
way,
you're
and
trying to
so.
say, Dave, is that, and I think I agree that we are moving forward and there's a lot of great things that are happening, but let's not rest, or maybe not.
Yeah,
rest
I don't mean to be a Debbie
we-
Downer.
We need to, even though that's occurring and we're all working towards that, it's almost as if we don't wanna lose that wave and we wanna make sure that we can keep riding that wave.
Sure.
So what's our next step while that wave is still,
But I think where I'm,
is that what you?
Well, I just think though, that the bank used to do business a certain way 10 years ago. Our company used to do business a certain way 10 years ago, and we've changed. We make more money behind the scenes than what people can see. And if we didn't, I'd be out of business. You have to keep changing and evolving.
yeah, so the part I think that frustrates me a bit about being stuck somewhere is, so the ordinance says, zoning says you're gonna have office on the first floor.
He doesn't have to, he could build multifamily in the district that he's building in.
No, have a business?
You can do multifamily in a business, can't you?
No. Just trust me.
So my point with that.
But see, this is the first that I'm hearing about this, so I don't understand,
Multifamily, highway business, special permit.
you can do multifamily,
With a special permit.
that's right.
Yeah, special permit. You can do planned unit development for mixed uses.
Planned unit development?
Yep, you can.
How
do-
many
you can do-
acres? 5.
3, I think we changed
Not
it.
for unit, not for unit, for planned business development, we changed it, not for
Oh, we
unit.
changed it for both, so maybe,
Well, maybe we did.
Yeah, I think it was down to 3, and then it also allowed for standalone,
I mean, I never have any
yes.
intent
Yeah.
to try to stifle through zoning, and I actually need the feedback from the development community and the banking community, because I have a planning degree and I'm following what I think makes the most sense. But if I don't hear that financially it's not working for somebody and the zoning needs to change, then I don't know that. And that's why the EDIC is valuable, because you need to be able to provide that information. You know,
Well,
and just say that this isn't working, this isn't financially viable, and here's the challenges. I hear it when people come to my office, and I absolutely try to work to make things
But
viable.
you just hear it in
so-
a sense when someone comes in and says, I'd like to do this, and you say, sorry, you can't do that. If you hear enough of those,
We
I'd
try so
like
hard to
this.
do a lot to try to make it work for
Well,
people.
so
I mean,
so
I'm-
residents,
No, I mean-
residents on the first floor in the downtown district.
Okay, but
It's not
do you
allowed.
understand how complicated, I mean, to do a zone change takes several months. And so if somebody is moving and they need to move a project now, they either, and we say to them, if you wanna do this, and we put this to people and say, we could change the zoning, but the zoning change is going to take at least at a minimum 2 months, and here's the process to make it happen. I don't have control of that, that's a state law.
Right, right.
So, you know.
I'm not saying it has to move on a dime, but I don't think you can say you're not hearing it if you're getting enough requests coming before you that don't fit the mold. Obviously, you're hearing a demand for something to do something that's not allowed by zoning.
Most people fit the mold. Most people wanna do, you know, they're opening up a storefront in the downtown business, they're building an addition on their house, they're wanna do, business that's,
We're creating seasonal cottage communities.
I just,
Well, I don't want,
why is there no new, why is there no new
I don't want
housing
anyone
being
to
built in East Hampton?
feel defensive, and I don't want anyone to
I don't know the
feel.
answer.
I'm
What-
not feeling
No,
defensive
no,
at
no,
all,
but.
I'm just trying to
but
get an
my point
understanding,
is
that's
this,
all.
my point is, I don't think, my first point is, I want the EDIC to be relevant. If we hash things out every meeting and you only take away one thing, that's fine with me. I just wanna be relevant, first of all. But second of all, I do believe that things are moving too fast and you can't be complacent. Everything that's been going on is good, and there are natural hills and valleys, you know, there's, you know, but, I think now more than ever, zoning needs to be creative and not static. And
How many new houses built in East Hampton last year? 10?
we used to build 30 a year.
Where's the land?
Yeah.
Okay,
Show
no,
me.
but that's
Single
exactly,
family.
And if it's being controlled by one property owner who doesn't
Yeah,
want to do
that's
anything,
exactly
I mean,
it.
how am I supposed to convince him to change his business plan?
No, the heck with him. No, that's the whole point.
You know?
There's no land, so how am I gonna, so, okay, with there being no land, how am I gonna bring more housing to town? That's the question.
since we've changed the accessory apartment ordinance, we've had a lot of
Yeah.
requests
Yeah.
for accessory
Yeah,
apartments.
yeah.
Well, how many have we had?
In the last year.
Not request, you know, they did it.
I mean,
Conversions.
I don't know,
We
because
can't
we
control
give,
people's financing,
we give out,
you know?
we do the permitting in the planning department, the building inspector has.
I'm just
numbers
curious,
for
I don't
what's
know.
actually built.
Accessory
I
apartments,
don't-
isn't that another sign of pent-up demand? I can't build a house, I can't find a house, so I'm gonna put an accessory apartment on an existing one.
It's
What's
also, it's
the
also,
answer
it's,
to what's the solution to the problem of not having enough buildable
And
lots?
affordability.
It
It's
may
affordable.
be a solution,
Yeah.
but I'm not so sure how all those neighbors feel.
And that's why
about it.
there's many young people that buy, I mean, right around my neighborhood on Loudville, there's been at least 3 houses that young people have bought, and I know they've got roommates.
That's
You
right.
know, one finally, he got married and he kicked out his 2 roommates, you know, but that seems to be the way the young people have figured out how to afford a place, which to me is fine. I mean, it's illegal, they're not supposed to have, you know, but I don't care as long as they're quiet.
No, actually, they actually can, and there's a, you know, relatives,
Well,
you can
yeah.
be related, so many non-related people can share a house.
Well,
That's fine. So-
You know, I'll try to, for the next meeting, you know, narrow down the agenda a little bit, and maybe narrow down a couple of topics,
Yeah,
so that we
let's
can,
focus.
you know, if we give Jamie and Jessica, you know, a letter with 3 requests, and they come back and say you're nuts, that doesn't bother me. No, I
But
wanna
it's
get to
not-
the point,
But it's
no.
not my call, and that's what I
Well,
want you to understand, is
no.
that I like, you know.
Yeah, but I respect your professional opinion, I
Thank
mean,
Even when you say he's nuts.
I never say
no,
that.
the point is, you know, you just, I mean, I don't mind bullshitting with anybody, but at some point in time, we gotta start moving things along. If this greatest idea is only great in theory, well then, okay, let's accept it, it's only great in theory,
And
just move
and
on
I
to the
think what
next thing.
prompted my over 55 was that
Other communities.
I'm up to 4 now of longtime, what I consider longtime East Hampton residents who left East Hampton for over 55 housing, predominantly in Westfield. Justin Cobb is now in a TV commercial for them.
Before we leave
Former
the
city
meeting,
councilor.
can I just add
Yeah.
to the new business?
We'll guide
Remember
us.
new business, is
Yeah.
that
Yes.
possible?
I'm gonna get there in a second,
Okay.
in about, yeah, let's do new business.
Okay, so before we leave, I just wanted to say that in light of the exciting economic development that is happening here in East Hampton, we have 2 new ribbon cuttings coming up. One on the 29th for, Percerello Butcheria. And then the next is June 10th at 11 o'clock, just before Cultural Chaos for Valley Paddlers. And then we'll do the big ribbon for Cultural
And I understand that there's gonna be a fish market on Cottage
Who,
Street,
I don't, somebody tell me.
Fish market where?
on Cottage Street.
I keep
Yeah,
hearing this
in
on
a
the street,
former-
but I don't know what's
Former,
going on.
condo next to Amy's that was, is vacant right now, it's gonna be bought, but it hasn't gone through, but that's what I was told.
I'll let you.
Jessica, I missed what you said, sorry, what you said
That's
something
good, Paul.
about
Good news.
second stories on downtown buildings?
Yeah, so with the Union Street, project moving forward, I've had at least 2, possibly 3 people interested in building up and adding apartments above the retail spaces that currently exist that are 1-story on Union Street.
Nice, nice.
Just as long as there's egress out, not like across the street, well, diner, restaurant, cafe, whatever that is.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
No.
Oh,
What was the other? What was the other?
Well-
Besides the butcher.
Valley.
Valley Paddlers.
Okay, 5/16, that's the 3rd Tuesday of the month, next meeting, is that good?
Yep.
Anything else? Motion?
Anybody needs a church, we've got a couple for sale.
Still?
Okay, we'll see you.
Are they on the
we'll see you-
market?
They're always on the market, but
Yes.
they're not officially on the
Yeah.
market, but.
Oh,
They're on the.
Diocese.
The diocese